Krishnamurti had this quote where he said, "Here's my secret. I don't mind what happens." And when I first read that, I was like, how is that even possible? How is it possible to exist in this world with that mentality of not minding what happens? I mean, it sounds great. It sounds amazing to be able to navigate the human experience, not minding what happens, but how do you get there? How do you actually live like that? And to me, what I noticed was when I really sat with that, what I noticed was that the majority of the suffering that I have experienced has come from my attachment to how I believed life should be. So attachment to my preferences, attachment to my desires, my expectations, my assumptions, my beliefs, and then life would do whatever life was going to do, and it wouldn't look like I wanted it to, and that's when I would suffer time and time again because I would be minding, I would be worried, and I would be really affected by whatever was happening because it was going against what my expectation was or what my preference was, you see? So it wasn't even life, it wasn't even what was actually happening that was causing my suffering, and it took me years to be able to see this. But once I saw it, it changed everything because the reason I was suffering was because of my attachment to how I thought life should be for me, which is coming from the ego. Even the Buddha said something like the root of suffering is attachment, something like that. So what I'm now learning and starting to see is there's nothing wrong with having preferences or expectations or desires or beliefs or ideas or whatever. It's fine. That's part of being human. But where we suffer is when we become attached to all of those things, when we need those things to be a certain way in order for us to be okay. That's it. So what would it be like to navigate this human experience where you can hold space for these things that you would like to happen, especially like these aspirations or goals or dreams or visions, yet on the other hand, you're not attached to those things or what the future is going to look like? What would that look like for you to be in that space, in that balance, in that flow? Think about that, because that's what I had to think about for myself. And I've been sitting with that for some time now. And the more I sit with it, the more I see clearly, the more I see what's possible. And then I start to live from that space occasionally, not always, but occasionally. And it grows every time I'm there, every time I see it. My consciousness is expanding and I'm experiencing some kind of inner transformation. And every time I do, I start to see what Krishnamurti was talking about. And the suffering starts to decrease, and there's this inherent sense of joy and peace that seemingly come out of nowhere. And there's nothing that's necessarily causing me to feel like that externally. It's just arising from within the depths of my being. And there's nothing like it. To me, that's what freedom is all about. Freedom is, again, having your opinions and your preferences and your expectations, but not holding on too tightly to them. Being able to let them go at any moment and being okay if things don't go your way. So that's one side to it. The other side to it is I do think there's this balance of caring about things, caring about people, caring about relationships especially, But again, not minding in the sense of not needing those things to be a certain way or to go a certain way in order for you to be okay. You can apply that there as well. And it's just another area of your life where you can start to experience immense freedom. Because whatever is going to happen in the external world in your life is, for the most part, with the external stuff, we don't really have control. You don't really have control over what's happening externally. But what you do have control over, or I don't really like that word control, so maybe there's a better word for it. What you do have, I don't know, it will come to me. But what you can do is notice your perception, and you can shift. That's it. That's the word I was looking for. You can shift your perception of whatever's happening. You can go from needing it to be a certain way to this place of, hey, you know what? I would like for this to happen. It would be nice. It would be awesome. But I'm fine either way. I want this relationship to work out. It would be great. But I don't need it to work out. I don't need it to be a certain way in order for me to feel good about myself, in order for me to feel worthy or valuable or enough. That's the difference. And when you start to live from this place, from this new perception, it's amazing what you start to see. And these things that you start to see in your own life are things that before you couldn't see, because the suffering from the attachment was almost like creating this cloud. It was creating this storm, and you couldn't see what was beyond it. But when the attachment decreases, the suffering follows, and the cloudy skies clear up, and you can see the sun again. You can see the infinite blue sky, and there's so much clarity, and there is this expansion of consciousness, and there is this inner transformation that happens from the inside out as a result. So it's amazing when I think about this. And again, I go back and I see all the times where I really suffered the most in my life. It all goes back to attachment. So then there's this thing called the law of detachment, which is essentially, I think, what this whole business about not minding what happens is all about. When you're detached, or when you're practicing the law of detachment, you are navigating the human experience in this way of freedom, in this way of possibility, in this way of flow. And at first it can seem almost like counterintuitive, or it seems like, oh, if I start to operate from this place of letting go, then I'll have less control, which control is an illusion. But the mind thinks, oh, I'll have less control, which will mean I won't be able to experience this good life, this abundant life, or this life that I wanted to experience, that I thought I had to experience in order to be a somebody. So it can be challenging at first to transcend the ego's grip to wanting to hold on, wanting to be in control, wanting to be the boss. But once you actually let go, once you detach, you see that it's actually the opposite. You actually receive more, because now you're in the flow, now you're in alignment, now your hands are open instead of gripping to some kind of need, some kind of control, some kind of attachment. And your energy is in this place of openness and, like I said, receiving. And these things that you were once desiring, you are now seeing them as, hey, you know what? If they happen, great. If not, it's no big deal. I'm going to be okay. So that right there is detachment from the outcome, law of detachment. And then when you're in that space of not minding and not needing, then that's when things start to happen when you least expect it, when you're not looking for it. But as soon as you start looking for it or searching or checking, that is embodying the energy of lack, the energy of need, the energy of not having. And your perceived outer world will continue to reflect that back to you in different circumstances, events, situations, people, relationships, you name it. It will keep reflecting that back to you, and you'll think, oh, there's all these problems outside of myself that I need to fix, that I need to solve, when in reality, the outer world, your perceived outer world and what you're experiencing is just a reflection from the projection of your subconscious mind and your deep subconscious beliefs of who you are, who you believe yourself to be, and the energy that you're embodying because of that belief. See? So the energy of lack, the energy of need, of even wanting sometimes, is expressing itself from this core subconscious belief of, as I am not enough, or I am unworthy, or I am unlovable, or I am broken, or there's all these different things that we get conditioned with subconsciously. And subconsciously, we believe that this is the truth. This is the essence of our being. And from that place, there's these different emotions and feelings, this energy that we start to embody because we're listening to that conditioning. We're listening to that song every day from the subconscious belief, from the subconscious limitation. And that is the signal that we're broadcasting into the quantum field, into the universe, whatever you want to call it. And that is what I mean by these different circumstances reflecting back to us that energy. So everything is interconnected. And when you start to see this, and you start to really become aware of your energy, and you start to protect your energy, and you start to notice what you're embodying each and every day, then it all starts to make sense. You start to see these different connections and these different synchronicities and signs start to all make a lot of sense. And instead of having this approach of, oh, I have all these things going on outside of myself that I really need to fix, that I really need to change in order for me to be okay, in order for me to embody peace and love and joy and happiness, the shift is, wait a second, what if I start from within? What if I start to investigate what these subconscious limitations are, and I let go of those things, or I dissolve those limiting beliefs, and then I can actually focus on embodying these innate qualities of my divine being, which have to do with abundance, gratitude, unconditional love, peace, joy, authenticity. All of these things start to flow very naturally when you see the truth of who you are. That's why knowing yourself, self-discovery, self-realization is what the awakening experience, the awakening journey is all about. So once you see clearly through the clouds and you remember who you are, then all of a sudden, every time you remind yourself of that truth, there's a shift in your frequency, because these old beliefs, these old clouds, these old conditionings that were preventing you from your true nature or seeing your true nature and allowing it to shine are dissolving, they're fading, and now the light can start to shine through. And what does that look like? That looks like this completely different energy than the energy you had before. It doesn't look like needing. It doesn't look like attachment. It doesn't look like striving and performance and earning. It looks like wholeness, original wholeness. It looks like unconditional love and contentment and possibility and freedom. And then everything starts to change around you because your embodiment, your frequency, your vibration is what is the signal for the universe, the outer world, to present you with different things and different circumstances that are in alignment with you or your frequency at the time. See? So that's why letting go is so powerful, because the more you let go, which I've talked about this before in other videos, but the more you let go, the more you have that energy, that mindset of not minding what happens, you become more magnetic, because the inner light of your divinity can now shine through, and it can expand way beyond you. And it's very magnetic. So you become more attractive by not even trying to be more attractive. As soon as you try to be more attractive, or as soon as you try to be anything or try to become something, you're going back to that old mentality of, again, subconscious core belief that's conditioned. I am not enough as I am, so I have to prove it, I have to earn it, I have to attain it, which is reinforcing the illusion of separation consciousness. But in the detaching, in the letting go of that, there's nothing left for you to attain. There's nothing left for you to shift, because your true self is now what's left, and it's full of everything that you've been searching for and seeking for. And that's when things get really magical. That's when, I talk about these things like law of attraction and manifestation, and there's a lot of questions around those things and how they actually work. Well, I just explained it. It's actually very effortless. It's actually simple. It's not complicated, but the mind gets involved, and the mind, or the ego, thinks that it has to do all these things and figure this out and figure that out, and that's where it gets really confusing. But when you return to your true nature and you start to sit with these natural emotions and feelings that arise from that place of wholeness, everything flows from there. Everything works out on its own in a very divine way, and there's no control needed. It's a flow. It's a river. And it's a river of abundance. It's a river of ease. It's a river of magnetism, of unconditional love, of all of these amazing qualities. So, yeah, that, to me, that's what it means to be in the energy of not minding what happens. And you can still care, you can still have these feelings, but again, even with that, you can, and here's the other thing, like a lot of times when it comes to different things like sports or performance, maybe you're an artist or a musician or some kind of creator, some kind of whatever, even like, it can be, I guess, anyone. But like, what happens is when you're transcending the paradigm of win-lose or success-failure, and you're just doing what you do out of enjoyment, out of freedom, out of detachment from the outcome, you actually end up performing way better than you would be if you were performing in a way where you were trying not to lose, or you were avoiding something. Anytime you're avoiding something or resisting something, there's going to be tension. There's going to be hesitancy. There's going to be overthinking. And those things are the very things that create these different blockages in the flow, in the light that I was talking about. So when you're just doing what you're doing for the fun of it, for the enjoyment, and you're not really focused on winning or losing, again, or being a success or a failure, which those are all constructs, made up constructs anyway, and they're very subjective. But when you move past those things, yeah, it's, again, the mind thinks, oh, I will not perform that well. Or like in regards to sports, I'm just thinking about sports right now because I grew up playing sports, and I can remember and the reason I'm saying this is because I know earlier I was saying that the true self doesn't need to perform in order to be enough and in order to prove itself. But I'm talking about performance right now, strictly in the context of sports. So don't get confused by that. So with sports, I remember growing up when I was playing sports, if I was so focused on needing the outcome to be a certain way, or if I, like when I was playing basketball, if I was like really trying to score 25 points, like that was my goal and that's what I felt like I needed to do in order to be a success, it would create so much tension, and I would I wouldn't be playing like I would normally play because I was putting too much pressure on myself. I was really minding, I was really worrying and stressing out over it. But when I just would go out there and not even mind and just play to have fun, and even with that, even playing to have fun, I was still playing hard. I was still doing my best. I was still doing everything that I felt like I needed to do, but I wasn't in my headspace. I wasn't suffering from the idea of what if this doesn't happen? And it was those games, it was those moments that I actually ended up having the best performances, and I would score the most amount of points and have the best stats, and we would win. And so all of these things would just be like a byproduct for myself, from my own game, my own performance, of not minding and being free and just allowing whatever was going to happen. So that's what I mean by all of that. That's what I'm talking about. And that's sports, but I think that can be applied to pretty much any aspect in our lives, whether it's the work we're doing, our careers, the things we're coming up with, things we're writing about, creating, making videos, teaching, whatever, even in relationships, right? So, yeah, this is something that is truly life-changing. It's absolutely something that throws the ego for a loop at first because it's so counterintuitive to the way the ego has been conditioned. But when you start to transcend the need, the mind's attachment to all these different things, and you start to live from your heart space, you start to live from the truth of who you really are, you start to flow in the Tao, and the light of the divine within you starts to shine, and things start to match that in your perceived outer world. You're like, wow, this really is the way to live, because it is a life of ease, not dis-ease, ease. A lot of times when there's dis-ease in the mind, in the subconscious, in the body, then eventually it will manifest in a way of disease and these different things that show up. And we're wondering, like, well, what was the root cause? And I'm not saying this is the way it always is. I'm just saying that it can be. The different diseases we experience can be, not always, but can be connected to some kind of dis-ease that started in the mind because of suffering and caused stress. But the suffering was coming from attachment to all these different things, and especially attachment to outcomes, and trying to control the outcome and trying to be a certain way all the time in order to be okay. So all the different compensations and coping strategies and all the things we do to make up for the underlying conditioning or limiting belief of I am not enough result in essentially dis-ease in the mind. So what do we do with dis-ease in the mind? We start with detachment, letting go, resting, and like I talked about in one of my recent videos, trusting. When you're in that space of freedom, when you're in that space of clarity, it's amazing. But then moving forward, you know that, okay, I can approach these different things that come up in my life really one of two main ways. Number one, I can try to fix and control and add to whatever's happening, which is the ego, or I can have awareness first and foremost. I can let go of my need to control, and I can surrender. And that approach, the second approach I just mentioned, is actually the approach that leads to the most amount of positive outcomes in the long run, most of the time. Because when we allow our ego, or when we transcend the ego in those moments and we respond from clarity and from love and from peace, instead of from fear and judgment and the different tendencies and conditionings that we're programmed with, it starts to change everything in our lives. It starts to create this new way of being that starts with the mind. It starts with new neural pathways. It starts with new beliefs that then result in a new state of being, a new energy, a new frequency. So, yeah, I think that's pretty much it for today. This is something, like I said, that I've been sitting with for some time now, and I'm just amazed each and every day, because I'll have times where, I'll fall back into the old patterns of trying to control, trying to make things happen, trying to chase certain outcomes, because I feel like that's what I'm supposed to be doing, which is me just getting lost in the clouds. But then I remind myself, hey, wait a second, here we go again. This is an old pattern. It's very familiar. I know exactly where it comes from because I've done enough inner work to know what my conditioning was like growing up and these different beliefs I had formed about myself. And so I've equipped myself, I've trained myself, I've empowered myself to deal with these moments and instances. And it's amazing because every time I do, I see through it, I transcend it, and then I can return back to that place of freedom. And I can let it go, and I can keep doing whatever I'm doing and move on. And and then give it some time. I forget about it, and the next thing I know, whatever that circumstance or situation was, it totally shifts. It changes completely. And this happens time and time again. So my invitation to you is to consider this. But again, don't hear what I'm not saying. To not mind what happens doesn't mean apathy. It doesn't mean you just don't care about anything anymore. It means you're not attached to the things you used to be attached to. It means you no longer need the things you thought that you needed at some point in order to be enough, in order to be okay, in order to be loved. That's what you're letting go of. Not the desires, not the expectations, not the beliefs, but your attachment to those things. That's what it means. That's the secret to a life that's full of inner peace, kindness, compassion, self-compassion, self-love, ease, harmony, and most importantly, authenticity. Okay? That is the light of the world. You are the light of the world. And it's time to let your light shine. So, that's it for today. If you found this video helpful, informative, or insightful, please leave a thumbs up at the bottom of the screen. And be sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.